Welcome back. We're going to jump straight into the material you sent over on OpenAI's latest thing, GPT 5.1. We've got a bunch of stuff here, articles, the official paper, user feedback, and it all seems to boil down to one big question. Is this like a revolutionary leap? Or is it more of a practical tweak, something that changes how we use it day to day more than, its actual smarts? One of the sources had this great analogy, actually. It said, if GPT-5 was like that, a brilliant but slightly cold coworker, then GPT 5.1 is the one who shows up after a long weekend, has had coffee, and remembers that you are a human,
Yeah,
quote unquote.
that's a nice line.
Yo.
Very PR friendly.
Exactly. Which forces us to ask, okay, is this vibe shift, this change in feel, just window dressing? Is it covering for the fact that it's not really fundamentally any smarter?
And that's the perfect skeptical lens we need here. We're trying to cut through all that launch hype. What we're seeing is really a two-part strategy from OpenAI. First, these two new ways it processes things, they call them instant and thinking. And second, this pretty radical shift in its default personality, how it talks to you. So the core question for us is it actually smarter or just, friendlier, faster, maybe better at managing its own resources?
Okay, let's unpack the strategy then. Starting with the models themselves, the sort of brains of the operation. Yeah, the sources are pretty clear on this. This is an iteration. It's building on GPT-5, not a totally new foundation.
Right, same basic architecture.
But they've changed how it uses its compute power and, maybe more obviously for users, how it actually expresses the answers. So this dual system. First up is GPT 5.1 Instant. This is the new default, right? Tuned for speed, warmth.
Yeah, the workhorse for most everyday chats, writing tasks, that kind of thing.
But you mentioned a technical breakthrough.
Well, breakthrough might be strong, but the key feature for Instant is what they call adaptive reasoning. It basically means Instant is deciding internally how hard your prompt is. It figures out on the fly whether to give a super quick response or if it needs to pause and, think harder.
Ah, so it adapts automatically. You don't have to tell it.
Exactly. Think about it like this.
Mm-hmm.
You ask for a quick summary of your emails, bam, Instant gives it to you fast. But then your next prompt asks it to draft a tricky legal reply based on some subtle point in one email. Instant recognizes that's harder, sort of takes a beat, uses a bit more compute, focuses its effort, all behind the scenes. You didn't have to switch modes.
That makes sense. More efficient.
That's the idea. That self-diagnosis saves time and effort.
But wait, if they have to split it like this instant here, thinking there, doesn't that kind of suggest they haven't quite cracked the code for one single model that's both fast and super deep? Why the split?
That's a fair challenge.
Yeah.
The sources seem to frame it as an economic thing. And maybe reliability, too, not necessarily a technical limitation. Well, they need something cheap and fast for the vast majority of queries, right? That's Instant. But then there's that, say, top 5% of really hard problems, complex analysis, deep research, where accuracy is everything and cost is less of an issue.
And that's where the other one comes in.
Exactly. GPT 5.1 Thinking. That's the heavy lifter. Upgraded for long reasoning chains, massive data synthesis,
Yeah.
complex planning. And the big change there is its pacing. It's much more willing to vary its thinking time now.
Yeah.
Meaning it'll actually speed up if you accidentally send it something simple. But for the really tough stuff, it's prepared to spend way more tokens, way more time than the old model ever would to really nail the answer.
So it focuses its resources better, more reliable for complex stuff.
That's the promise. Reliability for high-stakes work.
And importantly, the sources say most people won't even need to choose manually most of the time.
Right. The auto mode is apparently much smarter now. It acts like a traffic cop, routes most things to Instant, the main highway. But when it spots a really complex mountain road problem, it pulls out the thinking brain automatically.
Got it. Okay, let's talk about that vibe shift. Because, like you said, that's probably the first thing you, the listener, are going to notice. GPT-5 got a lot of flack for sounding. Well, one source called it a dense corporate report generator.
Yeah, I saw that.
All jargon, bullet points for everything, just very emotionally flat. Professional, but too professional, kind of robotic.
It was a bit exhausting to read sometimes, wasn't it?
Definitely.
That created this really interesting tension online. The feedback is already split. You've got people saying yes. Finally, it doesn't feel like reading a PDF.
And the others.
And then the others are like, whoa, stop talking to me like a life coach. Just answer the question.
Right. I saw an example like that. Someone asked a simple technical question, and the AI comes back with, that's a great question. I can sense your frustration. Let's find a solution together.
A bit much.
Yeah, overly cheerful, almost patronizing, it feels inefficient sometimes.
Exactly. And that tension is why the customization part of this update is actually a really big deal, a quality of life improvement. Anyone who's ever typed, "be less cheerful," or "just give me the facts" into a prompt, this is for you.
Okay, so what are the controls?
Well, first you can pick a base style preset. Think of it as the AI's default personality.
Hmm.
And there's a whole list. Default, professional, friendly, candid, quirky, efficient, nerdy, even cynical, apparently.
Cynical. Okay, interesting.
And this setting applies across all your chats right away.
But then it gets even more detailed, right? The sliders.
Yeah, this is where it gets really useful, especially if you write a lot or need different tones for different tasks. Experimental sliders let you fine-tune traits.
Like what?
Things like conciseness, how brief it is, warmth, that friendliness factor, scannability, how easy it is to skim, like with lists or bolding, and even emoji frequency.
Emoji frequency. Wow.
Yeah, so you could dial it in for a very technical, concise blog post.
Yeah.
Or a neutral, just the facts internal report. Or dial up the warmth and maybe emojis for, say, marketing copy.
And the key is you do this once, set your preference, and you don't need those massive, complicated prompt instructions every single time.
That's the goal. Less prompt engineering just to get the tone right.
Okay, so the vibe shift gives us control over the style. Let's connect that back to the underlying capabilities, because like we said, a lot of this seems to be about balancing how it feels and how fast it is with, well, how smart it actually is. Which brings us to the elephant in the room, capability. People were skeptical because OpenAI didn't release some big, flashy benchmark chart this time. So is it really smarter?
It seems like it demonstrates smarter behavior, but maybe not in the way people expected, like a single IQ score jump. It's more about how it uses its intelligence, resource allocation.
Knowing when to push harder.
Exactly. Knowing when to coast and when to put the pedal down. Pacing itself correctly. The sources give examples with tricky math and coding problems. Think high-level contest stuff like AM or code forces problems, stuff that needs multiple logical steps.
Okay.
Previous models would often just guess confidently and get it wrong. But now, the instant model apparently runs a quick burst of, well, they call it hidden reasoning.
Hidden reasoning. So it does the work but doesn't show you.
Kind of. It does the complex steps needed internally to arrive at the correct answer, instead of just giving you its first possibly wrong guess.
That's actually a pretty big deal. It suggests the intelligence is there, they're just hiding the messy work.
Precisely. And you see that resource allocation even more clearly with the specialized thinking model. Across a range of tasks, from easy to hard, the thinking model is now about twice as fast on the easy stuff it gets.
Okay.
But, and this is key, it's willing to be twice as slow on the really hard problems compared to the previous version trying the same depth.
So it's really concentrating its effort where it counts.
Yes. Investing the time and compute needed for reliable, complex answers.
Which brings us to cost. Because that effort has to translate into token usage, right? This seems like the core business change.
Absolutely. It's a direct trade-off.
So for the easy stuff, those daily summaries, quick questions, the answers are shorter, more concise. The reports say 57% fewer tokens on average for the simplest 10% of queries.
Which means your everyday use just got noticeably cheaper and faster.
Okay, cheaper and faster for the simple stuff. But what about the hard stuff?
Yes. The other side of the coin. For those genuinely complex questions where you want the model to think deeply and show its work, it's going to spend more.
How much more?
The number being reported is 71% more tokens used for the hardest 10% of queries.
Wow, 71% more expensive for complex work. Why would they do that? Why make the hard stuff costlier?
Because theoretically, the output is now worth that extra cost. They're betting that when you ask for that deep, complex analysis, the answer you get will be significantly more robust, detailed, and actually correct.
So you pay more, but you get something genuinely useful, not just a faster, wrong answer.
That's the calculus. It's an investment in reliable intelligence for complex tasks. The cost aligns better with the actual work being done.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift slightly to safety and stability. The system card update had some details there.
It did. And it shows some interesting trade-offs from splitting the models. The instant model, the one you'll use most, is reportedly safer and more stable overall compared to older versions. It's better at handling disallowed content like hate speech, violence, and resisting jailbreaks.
That sounds like progress, but the thinking model.
Right, the more powerful thinking model is mostly similar to its predecessor in safety checks, but the sources point out slight regressions in a couple of areas: borderline harassment and disallowed sexual content.
Regressions. Why would the more powerful model be slightly worse there?
It often happens with more capable models.
Hmm.
They get better at understanding nuance and subtlety, which unfortunately includes understanding prompts designed to subtly test or bypass safety filters. It's a harder needle to thread,
The cost of complexity again, something they have to watch.
constantly. But on the flip side, there's a really positive note on stability, particularly around mental health conversations. For the instant model, the rate of not giving unsafe responses in difficult distress situations apparently jumped significantly, from under 50% previously to the high 80s now.
That's a huge improvement. Much more reliable for potentially sensitive interactions.
It suggests a much safer default behavior when people might be reaching out for support, even if it's not designed as a therapist.
And quickly, what about the risk classification? Any red flags there?
According to their internal preparedness framework, that's how they rate potential dangers. GPT 5.1 is classed as high risk for biology and chemistry research applications.
Which means
It triggers stricter internal safety protocols for those areas. But importantly, it's still below the high-risk threshold for cybersecurity and for the AI improving itself autonomously.
so powerful in science, but the runaway AI risk seems contained for now.
That seems to be the assessment, yes.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big picture for you, the listener? If you strip away the marketing, GPT 5.1 feels like a really significant refinement. It's about the feel, about how it uses its energy and its stability when pushed. Same engine, maybe, but with a much better sense of pacing and interaction.
Just listening better.
Yeah. So, how do you actually get the most out of this? The sources seem to point to three main things you should probably start doing now. First, don't just stick with the default style anymore. Play with those personality presets. Maybe try efficient or nerdy. Use the sliders. Tune the warmth, the conciseness. Make that vibe shift work for you.
To control of the tone.
Exactly. Second, be deliberate about which model you use, or at least understand when auto might be switching. Use instant for quick stuff, first drafts, save those tokens. Reserve thinking for the really deep analysis, the complex planning, where paying that extra cost makes sense because you need the robust answer.
Right tool for the job.
And number three, this is a good chance to clean up your own act, your prompts. The clearer you are about your goals, your constraints, what you actually want up front, the better that adaptive reasoning and instant can work. It helps it decide whether to answer fast or engage that hidden reasoning. Clarity saves you tokens and gets you better results.
That leads perfectly into a final thought, really, something for you to chew on. This update gives you way more direct control over the AI's tone and its effort than ever before. You've got the presets, the sliders, the choice of models. So maybe the most useful question isn't just how will the AI keep changing, but maybe it's how will you change your habits to use this new control effectively?
Turning the mirror back on the user.
Yeah. Think of it less like a static tool you just use and more like, well, like that new coworker analogy. But now you actually have a say in their personality and how hard they work on different tasks. How are you going to manage that relationship?